While tales of male heroism during World War II have filled the pages of history books, the history of over 1 million Soviet women who battled on the front lines remains vastly untold. These women not only shattered the era's traditional gender roles, but significantly tipped the scales in one of history's most devastating wars. Let's go! The USSR was the only country in World War II where women were directly and actively engaged in combat, quite progressive at a time when women in other nations were largely confined to household and childcare duties. But the Soviet Union's policy of gender equality is less surprising when considered in the context of its underlying ideology, communism. The principles of Marxism-Leninism emphasize gender equality across all sectors of society, including the military. Women were viewed as equal members of society, entitled to the same opportunities and responsibilities as men. However, it's essential to remember that the Soviet Union was still a patriarchy, with key power positions occupied exclusively by men. Allowing women to serve as soldiers might also have been a cunning move by the government to showcase its progressive and equality-loving nature. Most importantly, women were recruited out of sheer pragmatic considerations. The Soviet Union faced enormous losses at the beginning of the war. Incorporating women into the military expanded the pool of potential recruits. Lyudmila Pavlichenko was 24 years old and a history student at the University of Kiev when she volunteered in 1941 following the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union. She was assigned to a rifle division and killed her first 2 enemies in Belyayevka, not in battle, but in the execution of 2 Romanian prisoners of war. Pavlichenko served near Odessa, where she eliminated 187 enemies before her unit was relocated to Sevastopol, following the city's capture by the Germans. There, she increased her kill count to 309, attained the rank of a lieutenant, and was honored for her bravery. After being wounded, she was withdrawn from the front and traveled to North America to rally support for the fight against the Nazis. When she was in North America, she was received by President Roosevelt and toured with his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt. During a meeting with journalists, she dropped a legendary quote to emphasize the need for a second front to the Americans. "I am 25 years old, and I have killed 309 fascist invaders by now. Don't you think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding by my back for too long?" Upon her return, Pavlichenko was promoted to a major and served as a sniper trainer until the end of the war. Following the German invasion of the Soviet Union, Rosa Janina, named after the German communist Rosa Luxemburg, was involved in firefighting operations in Argagelsk and stood guard to protect the kindergarten. After receiving the death notice of her younger brother during the siege of Leningrad, she requested permission to join the military but was initially denied. As the Soviet Union started employing female snipers, Janina was admitted into the military training program and graduated from the Central Women's Sniper Training School with honors. She joined the 184th Rifle Division and was appointed commander of a female sniper platoon. Janina killed her first German soldiers southeast of Vitebsk. Initially plagued by remorse and guilt, she soon developed a cold-blooded approach to killing the enemy, finding meaning in her life exclusively through her military actions. Quote, "The unconditional requirement to outsmart and kill the enemy became an irrevocable law of my hunt." Janina died on January 28, 1945, during the battles surrounding the East Prussian offensive. It's noteworthy that women were deployed in various other roles, for example, as the dreaded political officers or tank drivers. One of these infamous tank drivers was Maria Oktyabrskaya. She received training to drive and repair a T-34 medium tank, which she affectionately named Fighting Girlfriend, Boyevaya Podruga in Russian. Oktyabrskaya demonstrated her skills and bravery in battle and was promoted to sergeant. Following her death due to war injuries in 1944, she was posthumously awarded to the title Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest Soviet distinction for bravery in combat. She became the first female tank driver to receive this esteemed title. Marina Raskova, often referred to as the Russian Amelia Earhart, made a name for herself in the 1930s as a pioneer for Soviet female pilots. She was the first female navigator in the Red Air Force and later taught at the Zhukovsky Air Academy. Despite the surge of volunteer female pilots at the onset of the war, many were deterred from serving in combat roles due to bureaucratic barriers. Ultimately, Raskova personally persuaded Stalin to establish 3 female combat regiments, with the 488th Regiment remaining exclusively female. These women flew over 30,000 combat missions and earned numerous awards, making the Soviet Union the first nation to deploy women in combat missions. As these flying female regiments operated almost exclusively at night, the Germans dubbed them the Night Witches. Women played a crucial role in the Soviet partisan movements during World War II, including Zoya Kosmodemyanskaya. At 18, she joined the partisan unit and was captured by the Germans during a mission. Despite brutal torture, she neither revealed her identity nor gave information about her comrades and was executed by hanging. According to contemporary reports, her last words were, "You," referring to the Germans, "are hanging me now, but I am not alone. There are 200 million of us. You can't hang us all. They will avenge me. Goodbye, comrades. Fight. Don't be afraid. Stalin is with us. Stalin will come." The German particularly despised female soldiers, condescendingly referring to them as gun women, Flintenweiber in German. They viewed the Red Army women as unnatural beings. The fact that these women acted as combatants, firing shots and killing enemies, aligned with the ideological perception the National Socialists had of Bolshevism, their ideological enemy. In this view, the natural gender roles in the realm of Bolshevism were suspended. It was a battle involving an entire people, regardless of gender. Thus, Commander Günther von Kluge of the 4th Army ordered in June 1942 to immediately shoot Soviet women in uniforms. It's worth mentioning that the order was later formally retracted. Nevertheless, Red Army women who fell into the enemy's hands almost always became victims of abuse, torture and death. Most were shot near the front line, others were taken to concentration camps. However, Red Army women also faced hardships from their own side. Many women in the military service were forced into sexual acts, particularly by higher-ranking officers. Those who refused could be sent to the most dangerous front. A system of field wives, sometimes referred as trophy wives, emerged. Some young women, especially from rural areas, hoped to escape military service and return home by becoming pregnant. After the war, many of these women returned with a stigmatized reputation, as the society of that time, particularly in rural areas, held conservative views on sexuality and purity. Many service women were particularly insulted as frontline mattresses by the women who stayed at home. As a result, many women either concealed their military service or were reluctant to speak about it to avoid discrimination and ostracism. In the aftermath of World War II, the Soviet women who served with valor were returned to a world where the monumental scale of their contributions was often overshadowed by the enormity of the global conflict. Their stories, woven with threads of bravery and sacrifice, were largely untold, their acts of courage uncelebrated.